Welcome, everyone. This is November 22nd, a few days before Thanksgiving, and wanted to welcome Dr. Nancy Kirsner today. My name is Phoebe Atkinson, and I am the curator of this program, and Caroline Colas, who's the Director of Wellness at the JCC and the host of the program, is actually in transit, so she asked me to fill in today for this time. And it is my pleasure because I am going to be welcoming and hosting Dr. Nancy Kirsner, who is a specialist in gratitude and also a great friend. So welcome, Nancy. I'm just going to read a little bit about your presentation. Nancy writes that gratitude is the queen of all virtues. And today she would like to offer her gratitude perspective called a deeper dive. Nancy says, gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all virtues. And Nancy offers that quote from Cicero. While November is the month of Thanksgiving, giving thanks or expressing gratitude has moved beyond a mere holiday ritual or a spiritual or family custom. Researchers have discovered a fountain of wisdom about Thanksgiving with a small t, identifying social, psychological, and physical health benefits that come from giving thanks. Join Dr. Nancy Kirsner for a deep dive into gratitude and learn effective practices of gratitude, infusing this holiday season with the powerful giving and receiving of gratitude as a way of seeing and sharing the good in all of us. And I'll tell you a little bit about Nancy. Nancy is someone who has a lot of different titles at the end of her name. She is a PhD. She is a TEP, which means she's a trainer of psychodrama and group psychotherapy and sociometry. She's also an OT, and she's been in private practice for over 45 years. She's a consultant and a clinician. And in 2015, she joined the certificate in positive psychology at the Whole Being Institute, and then she served that forward for 2 years on our teaching assistant teams. Nancy was a mentor to other students. Nancy loves translating positive psychology principles and research into applied practice, utilizing experiential learning. And Nancy is co-author with myself in a book about action and using psychodrama methods in non-therapeutic settings. That was a book published by our late dear colleague, Dr. Adam Blattner, in 2019. Nancy also was the past president of the American Society of Group Psychotherapy and in Sociometry and Psychodrama, and she has been the editor of that network news for the last 3 years. So, wow, Nancy, a lot of people are joining us. Welcome, everyone, for this deep dive into gratitude practice. And Nancy, it's such a joy, especially at this time of year, to be reminded of that gratitude is something that we can continue to deepen in our practices. And so welcome. And I want to ask you a little bit about your connection to why gratitude. In positive psychology, we can choose so many things to teach on. You've taught already this year 4 times. You began with the work of Vivek Murthy, and you've taught us about Transitions, the book by Bruce Feiler. You also talked about this summer savoring and micro practices, and here we are, gratitude. So why gratitude? What's your connection to that?
I think my biggest connection to gratitude is that I personally have found it a very useful tool. What do I mean by that? I noticed, pretty early on, and I want to say this is like, I want to say 7 years of my lasagna of gratitude, because I think of it as a lasagna, a very rich one. And you all know I like food metaphors. So it just keeps layering in and getting deeper. And every time I think I know, oh, this is what this is about, it expands for me, whether it's through Jodi's work or Dr. Emmons' work. And the other real important thing for me, and I have shared this with the audience, is I have depression, and to me, it was the most powerful thing I learned beyond medication for depression. It's pretty impossible to be in your depths of depression and be grateful at the same time. So I find that the gratitude really helps me get out of myself, connects me to people, connects me to the world, and really connects me to what is good in myself and other people. It's a tremendously good offset to the negativity bias that we all have of our tendency, to focus on what's wrong or what's bothering us. So that was a lot about, why gratitude is always by me.
Well, one thing I really appreciate about yourself and many of the practitioners in positive psychology is that it's applied practice, and that the teacher really is the message. You have to know, of course, the science, but you have to be able to apply it to really be able to then teach it and to live it and to continue to live. And one of the things that the Whole Being Institute has created with Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar is called the SPIRE methodology. And it's the SPIRE learning that you keep circumambulating around these concepts and practicing them and going deeper. And also we know that from the broaden and build work that we continue to have a compound effect. The more we engage, it changes our brain, it changes our who we are and our identity. And I know you're going to talk a lot about that today, how these micro practices, when they're applied on a regular basis, really do have a big impact. And they are both for our well-being as well as helping us to increase our resilience.
Also, I think this is a wonderful time. I know a lot of us, and I've been listening to my clients this week in my groups. It's very easy to go into this whole Thanksgiving season, who we're visiting, and kind of go into automatic pilot. Happy Thanksgiving. How are you? I think I would like to prime the pump of gratitude to take all these practices we're using today and to really think about what you're saying, to really mean it, to really tune in and savor, look at the person you're saying hello to, and to really see if you can put some depth and savoring so your words just don't feel automatic, so you can just really, really say what you mean and use the whole experience for connecting. I guess I became aware of this because I had enough people in the last 2 weeks say to me, "Oh, I can't wait till the holiday's over," or "Oh, I'm going to so-and-so or for dinner." And I was thinking, wow. And I didn't actually think these other years about, well, what a way to set yourself up for a negative experience if that's your mindset. I can't wait till this is over. So I always learn from my clients. Sometimes I joke and say, I should pay you. So I was thinking, how could I turn this around? So that's also kind of the priming effect that Phoebe and I hope this will happen. So you can move into this time with some real authenticity and heart and use the words you really want to use to connect.
Nice, Nancy. So thank you for that frame. Let's get started, and I'll put up your slides, and then we'll be on and off the slides today, engaging with some frames and then some practices. Okay.
So the first slide that Phoebe showed, we're going to get back to, but I want you to remember these words. Gratitude is the heart's memory, because in the choice to practice gratitude, it is a lot about choosing to remember and reflect on what's happened. So I just wanted to point that out. So this came from Jody Wellman, and she's presented at the JCC a lot, and Phoebe will say a little more about her. As I was thinking about what do I mean by deep gratitude, a deeper layer than I presented before. And really what I really became aware of this last year is, even though gratitude, it's a character strength, it's a positive emotion, it's behavior, it's a tool, it's all those things. It's so much more because it has such depth and it's quite complicated. It's a layering in of complicated, powerful things. And I like the way Jody said that, because it's more than all those things. And spending time learning about it and learning about it and learning about it is always an extremely rich experience. And this kind of paralleled with something that Dr. Emmons says from this is the book that I love. I've probably given this book away to more people, Gratitude Works. And he talks about in the beginning, that part of what happened is gratitude really used to be very much a morally connected word. It had moral connections. And in a way, with positive psychology, it lost a little of the meaning in the sense of it became a tool, it became a strategy, very connected to happiness and well-being. And that in some ways kind of took away from, the depth and the full impact of it. Because it's not just a tool, it's not just a strategy. Because when you really look at what happens if you keep at it year after year, it really becomes a way of life for you. It's not just something that you say, it's a way of seeing life. And it's a way of every day choosing to focus on what was good in the day and not allow the negativity bias to take you over. And it's been very easy. I'm sure you've noticed the last 2.5, 3 years, there was lots of negative, emotional, dramatic stuff. It was very easy to get hijacked by the negative. Okay. So I want you to think about it as a very complicated thing and very magical in terms of how it not only transforms you because you're doing good, but it also brings out the best in other people and also inclines us to want to do more good. So it's a real shapeshifter in your life. So I could say lots and lots and lots of things about gratitude, but I want to cover these main points. What I was just mentioning about that it inspires us to do good as well as to share good that's the pro-social part. Gratitude inclines us to move into people, to move into relationships, to move into community, because it's not just a solo. As soon as you think about gratitude, you're going to be thinking about who or what you feel grateful for. And gratitude is part of the glue of relationships and the glue of communities. It's also, as I said, I'm going to say again and again, certainly we're born with some gratitude, but gratitude is really a conscious choice. It's where I often say to myself when I'm stuck, I'll go shift, shift. I have this gear in my head where I say shift. And it's that shift that I'm going to choose to look for the good. Sometimes this doesn't happen till the end of the day or when I have some quiet moments, but it's choosing to look for the good. That's a bit of perspective taking. And it's also not important just to look for the good and the positive moments. It's very important. Gratitude needs to be shared. Good news needs to be shared. And all of these behaviors are leading us to rewire our brain for happiness. We now know that neuroplasticity, our brains change throughout a lifetime, and really training your brain to be rewired along lines of gratitude, looking for the good. To me, these are the best mental hygiene, and I actually call them, Barbara Fredrickson talks about positive nutrients, and I actually think gratitude is probably one of the best positive nutrients and one of the best brain boosters for shifting your life. I always want to give a heads off to Ellen Langer or any of the other mindfulness practitioners, Tara Brach. I actually think almost everything begins with mindfulness. And mindfulness for me is just a word that means focused attention. Because I think unless you really focus your attention and shift your perspective, not much change happens. So that's another, I call it, you have to shift. And it's a mindful shift. Okay, that this matters to me and I'm focusing on it. And I like the way Ellen Langer always had great languaging. She said creative attention to the new. And that's about, it was there all along, but we didn't see it. So it's that attention to what else is there. That's the piece of looking for the good and not allowing that negativity bias, that part that we all have where the brain goes to the negative. And that's kind of based on how we were hardwired way back when to look for the tiger, to look for the death threat. And that negativity bias doesn't have quite the same focus now, but we still have a part of the brain that goes there. And the negativity bias is extremely strong. So all of this is about counteracting that. So you could look at gratitude as a mindfulness practice, and it's it's a form of self-regulation. It's one of those character strengths under temperance, where we really are using our self-regulation character strength and our mindfulness to turn us to the good. And it's an open mindset, and it's a growth mindset. It's open-minded. So all of these are pieces of how you work with your gratitude. This is a lovely quote. I have always loved it. The real voyage of discovery consists in not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. And long before I learned all the positive psychology content and research, I actually used this quote a lot with couples about learning to see each other with new eyes. It's great, more poetic form of an open mindset. And gratitude is about seeing what's there with new eyes and through the lens of what's good. So as we go on, we're going to take some breaks and do some practices together, which will be lovely as we do some group building. And I'm sure there's more, but there's 4 basic kinds of gratitude. We can be grateful for, I have shelter. I have warm shelter I'm grateful for right now. I can be personally grateful for, I have a place to live, I have a job, I have other amenities, I have lights, I have washing machine, all of the personal things. Relational gratitude is what we focus on a lot. And that is always, Phoebe and I and some other people use the expression, I stand on the shoulders of, and we all stand on the shoulders of many people, moms, dads, grandmas, mentors, coaches. So really noticing the network of people that are how we got here today, and also the network of people and other experiences that make our lives meaningful. And then the last one has really been, I think, a real highlight of life through and transitioning through the pandemic, different stages. And it's paradoxical gratitude. It recognizes that there's things in our life we never wished for and we really don't want to have, i.e. the pandemic. So this is a real important thing that I think a lot of people have been using beautifully and heartwarmingly and touchingly the last few years. And this always makes me think of Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar had this saying where we would say, things don't always happen for the best, but some people know how to make the best of that happen, the best of what happens. And I think this has been a lot of what's been going on in the last few years. And when I heard the creativity and the heart and the things that people did, because I've been doing a group, probably done about 400 groups in my community, lunch and learns like the JCC, and watching people's creativity and how they figured out, how to have a life, how to connect with friends, and how to kind of keep things rolling was just awe-inspiring at times. So this slide really refers to that kind of paradoxical gratitude. And when these kinds of crises, like the pandemic, like COVID, like trying to figure out all this stuff, should I take a shot? Should I not? Wear masks? Don't wear masks? One of the values of these kinds of traumatic events is that they really do, they take our lives and shake them up, like those snowballs, they shake it up and it's hard to see what's going on. But gratitude is a tremendous sifter. We sift things through gratitude. It's one of the ways we sift things. And gratitude is also about taking perspective. So let's take a moment and I'm going to ask you, can you think of something that you sifted through your gratitude that emerged out of the pandemic COVID time? And write it in the chat, please. Something you sifted through, you saw a little different, saw a little clearer. Like my example would be I had a very ambivalent to negative attitude towards Zoom and all those things. So one of the things I was really grateful for, and it really motivated me to get over my anxiety and fear, was that I had Zoom, because I could stay connected with my friends, groups, clients. So I really was ultimately grateful, and I didn't know how to do slides and do all this stuff online. So that's one of the things I'm grateful for an example.
So Nancy, speaking of slides and such, there's lots coming in about technology and that finding positive psychology, finding these lectures, teaching yoga and learning about how to do yoga on Zoom, how important human connection is, intuition kicking in, and the growth around the emotional growth, and a lot of demands and tolerations removed, and to really have within this experience to, increase a sense of being content, appreciation for nature, for space, a meditation habit that grew out of COVID, all these practices, wonderful. The Lunch and Learn series has been so important. Empathy was really cultivated and grown and nourished. And also in the beginning, we have someone that wrote, "I realize I am stronger than I thought I was." So that positive, that post-traumatic growth is often that secondary part of it, is just realizing the strength that one has and one develops, growing through and becoming even more resilient. Wonderful, wow. Nancy.
Beautiful and wonderful responses. And, as we're moving through and hopefully out of some of this pandemic, don't lose sight of those. Those are kind of what I call the little golden nubbies, because we have this tendency as human beings that, we lose sight of these things. We adapt to them. We don't think they're so terrific, but they have been terrific. So please remember to write those down, remember them, put them in your phone, because all of these have been really golden nuggets that you've sifted through this difficult time.
And Nancy, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about one of the books that you taught us about life is in the transitions. And then in these phases, one of the most important parts of coming out into the new beginning is talking about who have I become and telling people your new story. So I'm thinking about layering in this kind of reimagining how we've been changed and how this sorting and discovery is part of who we are today. A few more people have written in. I was so grateful to be able to continue to learn, exercise, and connect with friends and family over Zoom. And then also, because of positive psychology, I am seeing life through a different lens, the cultivation of a different lens, as you were teaching us, Nancy. And another person writes, exposure to positive psychology through this series, that it really began to offer, a whole new perspective. So shall we continue?
Yes.
All right. Just want to say that we're going to be doing some writing a little bit more, so you'll continue to capture the insights that Nancy is prompting you around. And I'll put the slides back on and we'll continue.
Next one. This is kind of what we were just responding to. So this is just to mention, I know that we've spoken about character strengths in the VIA. So I just wanted you to see that gratitude is in that quadrant, the purple quadrant of transcendent strengths. So it's one of those, that group of 5, but it's one of those strengths that allows you to get through difficult times. That's what transcendent strengths are. I often think of Viktor Frankl. I often think of Nelson Mandela, people that were in extraordinary, horrific times, and yet they were able to go through that and not lose their sense of humanity, gratefulness. And so gratitude is one of the transcendent strengths that helps us rise above and get through very difficult times. So I was saying it's a character strength, it's a positive emotion, and it's so much more. And I kind of really think of gratitude is part of the sugar of life, the sweetness of life, the connecting sweetness. Go ahead. So we could do many workshops just on the rewards of gratitude. And this is some of what made the focus on gratitude so compelling. Gratitude is the practice that we have a saying that you get more bang for your buck. And what that means is even doing a gratitude practice for a few weeks of just journaling is so powerful that you get results. So therefore, it became a very, very well-loved, well-used tool because it produced tremendous results. Made us happier, reduced stress, made us more resilient, improved all kinds of physical, social, friendship, romantic relationships. It helped us find more meaning. Who wouldn't want this? And this is also some of what it became so researched and so responsive a tool that's some of what broke gratitude off from some of its original moral connections and grounding that in some ways, and Dr. Emmons speaks about this, it took away from the complicated, complex nature of it. And that's why I love the quote from Jody in the beginning. It's so much more complicated and richer than a tool or a strategy. It's very robust, and it's 360 degrees around you and your life. And those of you that know me know that I was raised on Mr. Rogers. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he first debuted there when I was a little girl. Phoebe and I were talking about this when we looked at the slides. You know, we just look at Mr. Rogers' face, and there's such an essence of sweetness and kindness. I don't know how many of you know, he was the first minister that was allowed to have a TV ministry. So the children were his ministry on TV, pretty powerful. I didn't know any of that as a kid, but I do think Mr. Rogers exemplified for me, such kindness, and really was a living model. I wouldn't have used the word gratitude then, but the way he treated people reminds me so much of Chris Peterson, one of the early wonderful mentors and writers of the VIA. And one of his famous phrases is "other people matter." Well, that's what you saw on Mr. Rogers. Other people mattered. So I want you to think about, we didn't get where we are today. And this was also a frequent topic on Mr. Rogers. So I'm going to ask you the question, who has helped you in your life? And you can think of someone from the past. You can think of someone that's living, or even someone that's no longer with us. It could be someone during COVID, this series. But think of someone in your past who has really helped you. And as you're thinking about them, I want you to take this time, see them, see their face. Actually, this is one of the sensory things that makes savoring and puts some real impact in your positive psychology practices, because they engage the brain differently. If I just write the name down, I don't particularly think about the person, or I don't imagine them. So really see them, imagine them, take a few seconds to send them a thank you, and really feel it in your heart. And when you're ready, take this silent time. When you're ready, and this time as you're connecting, you're savoring, you're remembering, you're getting your brain, to go into that category. And Carol's got it ready. And put who that was in the chat.
So we already have some people writing in, Nancy, as they're savoring and bringing to mind. There's my sisters, my mother, my sister, my brother, my mom, my sister. So all of these singular relationships and important people that come forth in just knocking on your heart and who's there, right? So
beautiful. And if you want to kind of some gratitude extenders, is if you want at another time, and this is something, by the way, this would be lovely to do at a Thanksgiving table. It's another version of gratitude. You can also extend it to another layer. So you could say, okay, there's family, but now other people in your life that have been important to you and have helped you. So you can extend this and create with this. And it's really a nice way, I think, at the Thanksgiving table to, have the people that psychically have been in your life. So you have the people at the table, and then you have all the people that they are remembering, bringing in. It's a really lovely way to connect you to past, present, and all the help that makes us who we are today.
And Nancy, as Mr. Rogers says, thanking the helpers, the people that have helped us. There's a few more that came in, another of sisters in that group, my daughters, my sister, and my mom and dad. And I wanted to add, as we're doing the deeper dive, the invitation is to, when you're thinking of the person and you tell them, if you can, is to let them know, again, whether they're alive or not, just think specifically, what was that gift? What was it exactly, or in that realm, that was specific about the kind of help? And that also can help people to fill it out even a little bit more, the very different behaviors or the ways they encouraged you or helped you specifically.
Now, also, I'm going to build on what Phoebe said. So you hear us saying a lot this morning about write it down and speak it, because yes, it's okay to think it and feel it, but every time you do something more, writing is particularly significant for really allowing you to take it in and remember. But you could, after you have this today, you could call whoever you wrote there, your sister, your friend, and say, hey, I was thinking about you today. And you know what I was thinking? And you could actually say to them, I never told you this, but I'm really grateful for, and be as specific as you can. Like you might say, I'm grateful that you have been the kind of sister that has both loved me, but been able to say hard things to me. So you got to have specificity. You can't just say, you can say, I'm grateful for you, but it doesn't have the power that the specificity has.
And Nancy, before we go on, in addition to that, Dan Tomasulo has talked about the gratitude letter that I know you're going to talk about later in that research. And even if the person is no longer with us, we can be able to name and to connect with that information, to be able to write it or to speak it. So even if the person isn't with us, to bring that up. And we know that these interventions can be past, present, and future. We can think of something in the future that we're looking forward to. We can think of something in the past. Dr. Dan Tomasulo says that gratitude is always, though, a past emotion in a way, because it's already happened. And what we're doing is we're pulling it into the present, each time we bring it up and we savor it. So that's the kind of the magic and the shape shifting. I'm going to move us into the next slide. Is that okay?
Sure.
Oh, one other thing came in through the Whole Being Institute. It says they're taking another course, and Dr. Maria Sirois' course, she is actually one of the people that really brought forward 30-day practices, and she's a big focus on gratitude. It's one of her signature strengths, and she's known for the power of her teaching on gratitude.
Great. So this is the other end. I always like to talk about the Oreo, or both sides. So there's the gratitude that you feel for other people, but there's also this amazing, invisible, golden network that connects us all through gratitude. So this is thinking about, and we don't often think about that, how important you've been to people in your life. That's kind of one layer of the Oreo. How important have you been to people in your lives? Okay, that's one layer. And for a further reach, you have to think about the importance you're going to have to people that you haven't met yet and may not even dream of. So this is that extension, from us thinking about who and what we're grateful for, to thinking how we have provided that gift to other people. So think for a moment, we won't need to, but think about one or two people that you have been very significant in their lives. And that second part is so intriguing to me, because I've lived long enough, and it's a delicious live long enough. People come back to me sometimes. Maybe it's a client, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's just somebody that I don't know very well, but I taught something. It's so amazing sometimes that someone will come back to you and say, you know, when you said this, and I will get a little nervous and I hope I said something helpful or whatever. When you said this, it really changed how I looked at this. And I don't know if you've had those experiences where people come back to you or someone comes back to you and you're kind of surprised about, oh, wow. Look, and what you're surprised about is how important what you said or what you did was to that person. So we never really have that total sense of how many people we influence, and we have no idea. So just think of someone that that you're important to them. And write that down for yourselves. Do we have time for that in a quick chat, Phoebe?
Sure.
So who are you important to that maybe you don't often think of?
My friend Dave, someone says here in the chat. Also, someone says, I've helped my neighbors so many times and never heard a thank you. That's such an important teaching piece there, Nancy, the importance of us letting people know, right? We can have a deed and an action, and yet it's really very important to say it when we can. When we appreciate the good appreciates, right? As Dr. Tall would say. Another person has written, my husband, my daughters, my 4 children, my grandchildren, and my coaching clients. Wonderful. So it's so important to have a sense of contribution. And what Mr. Rogers is reminding us is that we never know, we can have our intention to serve our work forward, to make our offering, and that he reminds us that we never know, and if we do know, it's important to say it, to acknowledge it and appreciate it. So someone else writes, my sisters, my husband, some of my good friends, some of my cousins. So look at that reciprocity as you're talking about. Someone says 30 years as a school social worker. I think I have influenced a few. Yes, indeed. My goodness, the ripples of that goodness. Why don't some people reciprocate when we help them? Yeah, I think it's really about us modeling that and being able to really be that change, and to be able to also know that if it isn't something that you've experienced, that you can go ahead and serve that forward and impact someone else. We can't change another person, but we can certainly be a model and how we show up for people. I wanted to also say, Nancy, recently I heard a wonderful conversation with Dr. Sonia Lubomirsky, who continues to do so much research. She was a foundational research in this field. And she was talking to Scott Barry Kaufman on his wonderful psychology podcast. And she was saying all these interventions work because they include other people. Most of these interventions that we do are about other people and how they've influenced or impacted us. And so all of these positive psychology interventions really are pro-social, basically. And it was an insight that she thought was very important.
I want to respond to, I think it was Deb, and a couple of people said, that piece about for someone else, or you give help and you don't get responded to. That can be a very, very difficult piece. And sometimes I think actually that I can overuse my gratitude and get really upset when people don't appreciate it back, and I go, okay, I'm overusing my gratitude. That might not be important. So I think the piece about being able to say to someone, not just yourself, but like online or your friends, say, hey, I did da 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 da, and then focus on the part that really felt good to you, because I think there always is a good part. And sometimes I have to work to not resonate on, I got no thanks, because that goes down a dark hole. But I do think I just wanted to mark that because I think that's hard. hard piece of this all.
Yeah, and there's quite a few other things in the chat that are quite rich. One person is saying it's harder to acknowledge that some people are grateful that I'm in their lives. So yes, to build capacity to be able to take that in a little bit, that we impact each other and that we all take care of each other, in that conscious way, we have influence and impact. And then someone else is writing, my sister, my entire family, and the people I thank on a daily basis, like bus drivers, support staff, all workers, I come in contact with every day. So again, that virtuous cycle, that pro-social, like kindness, we can seed these things and our emotions are contagious. And that one thank you might ripple out to the next person that will then appreciate and acknowledge someone else. So let's keep going, Nancy, okay?
Okay. So every time I present, I have to say something because I'm a brain nerd. I love the brain and the neuroscience. So I tried to keep it, just kind of basic here. Gratitude lights up your brain. It is just a fabulous brain, soul, person nutrient. That's why I say it should be part of our diets every day. So just some of the basic ways. Gratitude is your brain starts to produce dopamine and serotonin, feel-good hormones, and serotonin regulates so many things, depression, sleep, lots of things. Gratitude, and you can tell from the way we've talked about it, to be grateful, you've got to get some perspective and you start reframing and restructuring how you see something along positive lines, because you're looking for the good. You know what happened and you're not ignoring it, but you're looking for the good. You're sifting through it to see that which is going to help you move forward. You don't ignore the other, but you're looking for the good. So that's how you're retraining your brain and rewiring it. Gratitude also reduces fear and anxiety because it reduces the production of cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So it actually slows down that. It also, and there's several people that have written about the bliss center in the brain. They haven't concluded where it is because it's in several parts of the brain. But when you are practicing gratitude, wiring and firing has to do with in neuroscience studies. They actually tap on your brain and they can see which part of your brains are firing through colors and images. So gratitude actually helps your brain fire and wires things together, and it wires connections to the bliss center, the happy center. All good stuff.
So Nancy, I also wanted to, while you're talking about the brain, acknowledge again someone who wrote in that when they don't receive a gratitude or an appreciation after, offering kindness and support and such, that, they say in other kinds of phrases that we hurt where we care, right? So our brain is also, because it's pro-social, will experience, and something that isn't fair will go into a threat response. And that's why, and I know you do a lot of work with couples, that John Gottman, for instance, says you need a lot more gratitude and appreciation, especially when there's difficulty or conflict. And it's because we're trying to go back and forth into these different centers of our brain to elevate the good, because that negative and that hurt and that threat carries so much more weight. Do you want to say anything about that and how it's important to really, engage the gratitude,
Sure.
especially when there's some difficulty?
Right. And for those who haven't been with us before, the neurobiology of heavy feelings, negative feelings versus joyful feelings are the negativity bias, which we're speaking of. Negative feelings are like Velcro. And I'm going to say sometimes they're like that really strong Velcro that when you go in the sports store, it's holding up a whole canoe or it's holding up a pair of skis. So the negative feelings are like Velcro. They stick to you more. It's hard not to focus on them. Whereas the more positive emotions, joyful emotions, that's the area of Dr. Fredrickson's work, they're like feathers. They're like little micro moments So you can see with the inequity, if you kind of just even look at the chemistry of how positive versus negative feelings are, you got a bunch of feathers here and you got Velcro. So you're always wanting to bank the positive, Piggy's positive experiences, savoring, remembering the people you're grateful for, following up in your mind, writing about it. That's what you're always trying to do, build a nice reserve in these positive thoughts and feelings. Not that they'll ever make the negative go away, but you learn how to draw on them, to help you balance out your life. Does that make
Great.
sense?
Yes. Thank you, Nancy. And someone also wrote in the chat that, this that positive altruism that she says, my father always said that giving is selfish and that we do, it feels good. And we shouldn't do it to get the thanks. So, the idea obviously that we're giving and our intention around that, because we get a lot from giving. And, as we go along, we know how good it feels to be appreciated. We all want to have a sense of we're making a contribution. Nancy, I'm going to move us on we have a few more things to share today. Is that okay?
Move us on.
Okay, great. I really appreciate all the interaction. And so this next one is a gratitude practice. It's kind of the mother of all practices, Nancy, that you're going to lead us in. And just as a time check, we have about 10 minutes.
Okay. So by the way, you're going to be getting all these slides and a lot of the data. And so you can do these things and the how-tos are in the slides. So there are many ways to do this daily dose of gratitude. Some people like to do gratitude at meals, whether it's with family or friends. Some people like to have a gratitude journal. The push about writing things is it sticks more. The kinesthetic part of writing, it's interesting, not typing on your computer, but writing helps things, just stick and get in your brain more. So again, the remembrance that gratitude is about slowing down to see and appreciate the small details that we might race through. And this help, I don't know if your hedonic adaptation is the fact that us humans, we very quickly adapt to good things. So, once I get that really nice, comfortable car and it has air conditioning, after a few months, it sometimes feels like, what's the big deal? And then you have to get something else. So we do have this human tendency to adapt to good things. So the gratitude kind of helps us not take for granted the small details and to appreciate them.
Okay. So looks like Nancy is having a little difficulty. So I'm going to take us through this next exercise that Nancy was going to teach you. And it is one of the number one gratitude practices we want to make sure that you are familiar with. So it's called the 3 good things. So if you can, just think about 3 good things that went well either today or in the last 24 hours and why. Why were they good? And what was your part in it? So that's basically the practice. So thinking about what was something that went well, maybe 3 things. And the number 3 is important because, as Nancy was saying, that can counter the negativity bias. So just take a minute, give you a minute or so in your own contemplation and write down, what are 3 things? They could be the smallest little things that went well. What was it about it that made it good? And was there something that you contributed to making that happen? And then as Nancy pulled through earlier, the strengths work, was there a strength that was involved that perhaps you tapped into to bring this forward? Was it something that you were using from your own character strengths that you might want to name and weave that into the reflection? So we're retrieving something that just happened or in the last 24 hours, making it very salient. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson talks about when we bring in a positive emotions, especially like gratitude, it's like glitter dust on our neural pathways that it remembers. It helps us to remember, oh, that's a keeper. I want to remember that glitter dust, that positive salience it's called. So if you'll type into the chat, maybe the essence of that was one thing that you might want to share, maybe just an essence statement or something that, the positive contagion of. If you feel like it, you can type that into the chat. And if you don't want to, you can just savor, as Nancy has told us, that the power of savoring it makes it, even more strong in terms of the gratitude practice. So I'm going to continue. Nancy might be finding her way on. I hope she does. I'll look for her. If not, I'm just going to finish up the slides. We have one or two more practices to share. So Nancy's reminder in the gratitude practice, this is one of the most research practices in gratitude, is that it's about slowing down, appreciating, really looking at the details that counters that hedonic adaptation and really helps us to bring in the moment and celebrate. Here's another practice. It's called the GLAD technique, and it was created by someone named Donald Altman, and you'll get these slides, so you'll be able to really benefit from the practices. And I have actually put together a slide for you that has all the prompts, but this is the essence of the GLAD practice. I just love the name of it. So GLAD is something you're grateful for today. So we just did what went well. That's an aspect of gratitude. This is a very, very specific. What's a gratitude that you have for today? What's something that you've learned? So pulling through a learning. What's one small accomplishment that you did today? And then what's something that maybe delighted you and brought a smile to your face? So again, take a minute. You don't have to share these, but while we're doing gratitude practices, this is all about applied practice. Take a moment and write down in this moment something you're grateful for that you're aware of. It could be a micronutrient, as Nancy said, something you've learned so far, maybe about gratitude. What's one small accomplishment? And then something that maybe have delighted you in today. It's early, or maybe in the last 24 hours. So I'll just give you a minute. And the GLAD practice is something that you can do every day. You can do it as a 30-day practice. You can do it once a week. It is a wonderful, very quick way to get your positive neurochemistry going. And I see that Nancy's back. Welcome back, Nancy. You are, nevertheless, she persisted, right? So you can unmute yourself if you will. There you go.
So glad you taught that. I love that practice.
So Nancy, I'm going to bring us to our last slides. And here's the GLAD practice, kind of filled out, and you'll get these slides, so you'll have that. And in our reference section that we're going to give you also, there's a GLAD practice that you can link to. So a couple of different ways that you can have the basic GLAD snapshot that you can partake in every day. It's another gratitude practice. So Nancy, go ahead and talk about this one and your last remaining slides, if you will.
So Dr. Robert Emmons is our foremost contemporary researcher and authority on gratitude. If you've never met him, go on YouTube, go on TED Talks. He's an incredible, beautiful man, a great speaker. And his language is quite beautiful. You're going to hear the reciprocity, the infinity sign, the connecting of it all. When I see life is full of gifts and I'm the receiver, our entire life becomes one big gift. And this is how he organizes his whole experience, both seeing myself as the recipient of all of these gifts, as well as I am a potential giver of my own gifts to other people. That constitutes my identity. I am both a recipient as well as a giver of grace. And there you see that reciprocity, that coming and going, and also what we started with in the beginning, kind of the totality of the complexities of gratitude, gratitude all around us. I remember when a few months ago, I did something with your Rabbi, Deb Orenstein, and we were going to call it gratitude in difficult times. And Rabbi Deb said she was right, gratitude in all times. Next. So I always get Pooh in because Pooh is one of my favorite teachers. And this quote, he says, Pooh, Piglet noticed that even though he had a very small heart, he could hold a very large amount of gratitude, and so can you. So Phoebe and I want to express our gratefulness. You have been an amazing community, my favorite community to present to in all these 2.5, 3 years because of your givingness and the way you share and engage with us. So thank you very much.
Nancy, thank you. And I want to just tell people that we have all the reference here that we're going to send you to what we talked about today, including how you can find Dr. Nancy Kirsner and all of Dr. Robert Emmons' work, as well as Dr. Dan Tomasulo. He actually brings Dan brings Tal Ben Shahar through a gratitude visit, a virtual gratitude visit, and there's a Vimeo and a beautiful example of how that can be done, even if it's with someone who's no longer here with us. So Nancy, wow, I know we were going to ask people to type into the chat and teach them what a future forward gratitude can be, looking forward to. Do you want to do that last prompt and they can type into the chat? What you're looking forward to, right? And that's a future forward.
Future forward. And so think about one of the things we know that we need to be have a sense of well-being. We do need things on the horizon to look forward to. So what's something that you're looking forward to? And Phoebe's putting on, this is Dr. Dina Neer out of Israel. She speaks a lot about future forward gratitude.
Nancy, do you see those? Do you want to read some of those out?
Going for a walk in the woods. Woo-woo. Let's see. Go ahead, Phoebe. Would you do that? It's not coming up.
Sure. Yes. So going for the walk in the woods is one of them. And while people are typing in, Dr. Rabbi Deb Orenstein is with us next week talking about regret. And, this idea of how we can learn from our regrets. It's a topic that is very dear and close to her heart. And she's just a brilliant teacher and presenter and contributor on our series, as is Dr. Nancy. Here's another one, seeing my sister at Thanksgiving. Yay. So already we can get those wonderful neurochemicals going as we look forward to this. So we can look at gratitude as a past emotion and a practice, or we can bring it into the present. We can also look forward to it. Someone says, reading a book I want to read. Oh, I'm right there with you. Yes. Gail, I'm looking forward to my grown daughter's arrival in New York City next month. Yay. Fantastic. Wonderful. So all these things to look forward to, and we can certainly look forward to next Tuesday with Dr. Rabbi Deb, and Caroline will be back. So Nancy, thank you so much. I wonder if we can ask you to type into the chat, everyone, something that you're grateful for that perhaps Nancy has provided or sparked something for you that you want her, and let's just shower her with some gratitude real time. She gave us a lot today. Her preparation, her scholarship, her kindness, the way she's so pithy and how she translates these research studies into very easily accessible lectures. So many thanks. It says grateful for this series and grateful for everything. So how about some jazz hands, everyone? And I'm going to unmute you all actually, and just ask you to, you can, let's see, allow, yes, let's see. I'm allowing you to unmute. I think I'm doing this right. Anyway, so some jazz hands for Nancy. Nancy, thank you so much. Happy holidays, everybody. And just get those gratitude practices going. They really help so much. And we'll see you next time. We are so grateful for you on this series, and love to you all, and love to Caroline, who will hopefully be watching the recording, and whoever is watching the recording. Blessings all. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so